Is everybody in? Is everybody in? The show is about to begin.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Concerts That Made Us. I'm your host Brian. Before we get to this week's episode, the answer to last week's music trivia question was, of course, Slash. Slash was the famous guitarist who found his mother in bed with David Bowie. Slash's mother was a costume designer with rock and roll clients like David Bowie, whom she dated. Slash says that awkwardness aside, he really liked David Bowie and thought he was really cool. Now for this week's music trivia question. Which famous rock band started off as a tribute act to British rock band The Zombies? And we've got another 5-star review. Great idea and execution. Concerts are one of my favourite things in the world. I love attending them and I love hearing about them. With this show I get to hear the actual experiences fans have with my favourite artists, and artists I haven't heard. The host does a great job engaging with the guests and formatting the show. This review was left on iTunes by Bill from the Way podcast. So thanks, Bill, and don't forget your 5-star reviews will be read out on the show. Now on to this week's episode. My guest is Aryn Black from Scorpion Child. I was looking forward to doing this one for a long time. They've got some excellent music and I can't wait for you to hear this episode. So, without further ado, let's get on with the show.
Collapse and fall.
Hey, Aaron, you're very welcome to Concerts That Made Us.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for having me.
No problem. I'm delighted to get you on. I remember the first time I heard you guys, a fan of the show actually sent me a link, and I listened to one of your tracks and I thought to myself, there's no way I can get these on the show. This is some like legendary band from the 70s, like Led Zeppelin or something. How am I going to track these guys down? But when I looked you guys up and seen that you're a modern-ish band, I was shocked, you know?
Wow. That's very cool. Thank you. Yeah.
So before we get to the band, we'll chat a bit about your history. Do you remember, if you can, what was your very first musical memory?
I mean, it probably would have been Michael Jackson or Prince.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I had a book that had all the moves that Michael Jackson does.
Right.
Like it had like the moonwalk and his like various shuffles. I'm sure a lot of those moves he kind of got from James Brown. But I didn't know that. So he was a popular thing at the time. So I had this book and I would just like flip through this book, like, wow, like all this cool stuff this guy
Yeah.
can do. And yeah, he was kind of like definitely my introduction to music. And then I think, yeah, Prince was very soon after. My first concert that I remember would have been Prince and the B-52s.
Oh man. That's an introduction.
Yeah, it was like an outdoor thing. I think Prince was doing the Purple Rain tour for
Oh,
that. I still have a shirt from that tour. Yeah, I can't really wear it because it's gonna fall off, but it fits.
right.
I mean, so I should probably frame that or
Yeah,
something soon.
yeah, definitely, especially a Prince concert. Jeez.
So those were my earliest memories of music.
It's not quite what I expected. What fair enough, Prince, yes, but Michael Jackson, he's kind of a lot different from your style of music.
Oh, I mean, I still watch. I still get the like. My skin crawls when I see performances of him in his prime. Like, how does this kid? How could he keep up that energy and those movements and that choreography? Well, yeah, I mean, it still outdoes anything you see today.
Yeah, he's one of them people that every so often one person comes along and they totally revolutionize everything, and there'll never be anything like him again.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. So, do you remember when you first decided you wanted to be a musician?
I don't know if I decided that or if it was just decided for me by some, astral being or something. I mean, I was the first time I tried my hand at music. It was interesting. It was in early, or I guess it would have been in junior high. Yeah, it would have been like late elementary or junior high, maybe seventh grade. There was there's a couple of my friends that were like jamming, playing in a band, listening to the Grateful Dead, and I was already listening to heavy metal and stuff like that. So I came over and like did, some and they were like, whoa, that's not what we're doing, but that's cool. And then I remember they got kind of converted, and then I got into later junior high, and I met some other kids that were shittier musicians than they were.
Mm.
And I was like, these are my guys. And we played just punk rock,
Yeah.
pretty punk. Yeah. So that was really fun because that was a lot of energy there. And then we just kind of started to develop together in high school, like close to the same group of guys. We just started, finding out, whoa, I can like I can do this and I can do that now. I really early on, I was not singing. I was like,
Proper screaming.
like, yeah, just being as heavy and hardcore. Like it was hardcore music, and like that's what I was playing in high school. Like I always knew I could sing, or like I always knew I had an acceptable voice, but it was never what I was really into. I mean, still not what I'm really into. I mean, I still love that really screamy,
Really?
intense stuff. I either like that or I like goth, so it's like, I mean, I love the classic. Obviously I love classic rock and, British heavy metal style, like, classic stuff, but and German kraut and stuff like that, and prog rock, and but I go, like, I always keep things like in the rotation. I keep all this stuff in the rotation because there's so much different, and so many different kinds of music that influence me that none of them really go away.
Yeah.
Like every once in a great while, I'll throw on that late '90s Jimmy Eat World record and be like, yeah, this is kind of all right, yeah. But like, it's funny. Yeah, I'm actually starting like a hardcore band with a friend of mine who was in a bunch of hardcore bands back in the day too, and we're like older guys now doing that. I'm gonna wear like a basketball jersey and like some chains and some hard. It's gonna be fun, just for fun. We're gonna make cassettes.
Right.
We're gonna hand them out to people. That never left me. So I guess it was a different take for me when I hear people say, "Oh, Scorpion Child." It was like hearing, something that sounds like Zeppelin or something that sounds like Judas Priest. I'm always like, oh my God, like that's not even what I was raised on. I had a cousin that was listening to Pink Floyd, and he had one of those first early Discmans where if you look at it wrong, it skips. And like, it looked like a little turntable. It had like a little glass thing, and you put the CD on there. I was like blown. I was like looking at it like, wow. And I remember that's when I first heard Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd. And he had Sabbath. He had Masters of Reality too on CD. But CDs were like, these CD players, these little early like Discman CD players were like hundreds of dollars.
Yeah.
Or I don't know how many quid they would be, like, or how many euro. You guys are Euro, right?
Euro, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know how many euro that would be, but probably hundreds of dollars.
Definitely.
Hundreds of euro. But yeah, he would get mad if I would like touch it. He'd be like, let me do this. You just put on the headphones. I remember hearing CDs with such clarity. Like, it was crazy to hear music that didn't have crackles.
Yeah.
And, obviously years later you miss the crackle and you always come back to the crackle.
Yeah. It's kind of weird though nowadays that people have gone back to vinyl then, isn't it?
Honestly, I don't think it's that weird. And I'll tell you why. Because, all through the early 90s, I was buying, being into punk and hardcore and metal music, I was like digging through, they were still making vinyl, even when it wasn't cool. So I've been collecting it since I was a little kid, because think about it, vinyl was the medium that we had to listen to when I was in the 80s, when I was a little kid. And then it went away and gave way to CDs, but I was still listening to stuff that was like pressing vinyl, So, and I still have those records. I never got rid of those records either. So for me, it was like I never really stopped collecting vinyl and cassettes and other various medium. But I mean, I have some CDs, but I don't have nearly as many CDs.
Yeah.
But I mean, I respect the sound quality. I just don't. They just haven't made the CD players like they made them in the beginning. They started to make them cheap, and they just didn't have the same effect,
Yeah, you're totally right.
But yeah, and they just become coasters or like, cocaine, like, for things, it doesn't, there truly is a great sound quality
Mm.
Encapsulated in this digital disc, but it's just a different kind of listen. True. I like to hear the warm tones and stuff that you can hear on tape and vinyl and stuff like that you just really don't hear on CD. Like those imperfections are, I think, important. But yeah, vinyl did make a comeback, and like to me, that's what I primarily always had. Like I had the most of that. So yes, for 40 years I've been lugging around a crate of,
yeah.
Just more crates as time goes on, so it's very, like we just I was telling you, we just bought a house, so I'm hoping that this is the last time, even though I know it won't be, that I have to move 46 fucking crates of records.
Oh man, are you serious?
So I need to sell. So I do these pop-up markets here, where vendors come and buy, sell, and trade their items and stuff. So I sell vinyl. I try to get rid of stuff that I don't listen to, and at a reasonable price, and old T-shirts and stuff that I don't wear, stuff like that. So there's really cool things that people sell. So I just keep it simple. I just sell music related things because I acquire so much of it,
Yeah.
over time. And, a lot of those things I hold on to, like that old Bauhaus or Sisters of Mercy shirt. Like, I'm not going to get rid of that,
Yeah, no, you'd be crazy to.
1990 skinny puppy shirt. Like, I'd be stupid to get rid of that stuff, So I hang on to like certain things, because I'll never not like it. It's always going to be, or that old print shirt since I was 5, like that's never gonna, unless somebody steals it, it's never going anywhere, even if I'm not wearing it. Yeah. But there's other things that I take, give or take,
Yeah. Is there a record that's your prized possession then that you'd never, ever get rid of?
Like one single record? Oh man, there's this record that I have an original pressing of by an artist named Jackson C. Frank.
Right.
He was a folk guy, and that record saved my life, like on several different occasions. It's called Blues Run the Game. And it's like, I couldn't even tell you what it's worth, because it's worth a lot. I know that much. But that particular record, it's not about the monetary value of that record. It's about how, like, it's so depressing.
Really?
And I love depressing music. It's real sad. And he was like the folk singer. He was like the guy that Paul Simon, listened to, and Bert Josh, like all these, like, he was from Buffalo, New York, and he came over to England and lived there like in his early 20s, and like launched this like European folk revolution that all these guys, like, if there's this video of him like playing, there's one video and it's like 15-second clip of him sitting there just playing by himself, and it sounds, and you see all these famous people like in the audience, and there are only 15 people in the audience, and they're all like people that went on to like become,
massive themselves.
Yeah. And it's that guy is one guy that can write a song more powerful than most bands, as far as, that's probably one record I wouldn't give up. I mean, there's like, I mean, there's so many different styles, and there's records for each style, that are irreplaceable, or, they're records that are worth buying a new copy when the new pressing comes out, so you don't have to play the older one.
Yeah, I get you.
And mess up the older one, so that's kind of cool.
So, how did you jump from being into punk rock and hardcore to creating a band like Scorpion Child and finding that sound?
It's interesting because I was like, all right, I've sang for a hardcore band and a punk band, and I just wanted to, honestly, it was 2006, and Asa, who's in the band with me, him and I started the band in 2006 when we were like in our 20s. And we were listening to like, everything from like Love by The Cult, like Fields of the Nephilim. And we were also listening to like Judas Priest and the Scorpions. And it was like we wanted to mesh it all together. But the thing is like the goth side of it wasn't really happening at the time, at least in Austin, in the area that we, amongst the people that we knew. So, and the goth is like derived from more of like a death punk, like more like a death rock thing and like more of a punk thing. So, but there were rock bands coming up, doing like the MC5 Stooges kind of stuff, which I mean, that's like also kind of derived from like punk and
yeah.
And so we were listening to that and Cactus, and I mean, I still love all of that shit, So we went that route first, and it wasn't really until like we just kind of brought the reunited the band after I mean, really since 2016, and I feel like now's the time. In 2016, we were kind of doing this like we'd achieved this like Deep Purple kind of vibe, we were doing that, but I was starting to want to bring some of that, those chorusy guitars back in, and just bring some of that element back into the music. And then the band kind of split up, and we didn't even really do a proper tour. We did our last tour with Uncle Acid and the Deadbeats across Europe, and I was already wanting to. The stuff that we were going to create was going to transition back into this like almost like heavy goth wave stuff,
Yeah.
And then the band kind of just like fell apart. But when we restarted it, we were like, now let's seek out people that understand this kind of music. You know what I mean? So that we can do what we've been doing and merge it with what we have always wanted to do as well. So we're going back to the beginning, almost before the beginning of the band, and revisiting it all together. So knowing what we've accomplished versus what we have wanted to explore with this band. I mean, obviously we're not going to be like a techno group, or we're not going to be like a acid free jazz kind of band, but we're we would just change the name if that's what we wanted to do. But as long as it's Scorpion Child, there's still stuff that we came back to explore the other side. Does that make sense?
Perfect.
Yeah, it's just going to be like we're going to essentially be creating something that we don't hear very often, which is the goal when you play music. You're like, oh man, like there's bands like, actually our drummer played in the beginnings of this band called Tribulation.
Yeah.
They're from Sweden. He's actually Swedish. He's from Sweden and has a band, and had another band called Enforcer with his brother who also played in Tribulation.
Yeah.
So he lives here in Austin, Jonas. So he plays drums for me now. And they're like they're kind of like black metal with a dark wave kind of thing going. So that's really cool. So he understands that. And we've just wanted to bring people in that want to do like the punk and the hardcore element of me is never left. I mean, it was always in Scorpion Child. Like I don't perform like Ian Gillan or Robert Plant as far as what I see that I do.
Yeah.
To me, the way I feel music is a little more like, and whether I'm doing this or doing that, So I think that, that's just how I know, that's how I know how to feel music. So, even if I was playing funk, I would probably approach it from a punk.
Yeah.
standpoint, or I just what I know. It's just where I came from. But I developed some of these more, I guess, rock and roll traits naturally as I explored the music. over the years. So it's been fun. I mean, I just love the theatrics. I love performing,
It's all part of it.
Yeah, whatever the music kind of like tells you to do is what you do, and it's going to be through this young punk filter, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. When you formed in 2006, you clearly had a vision. Was it hard to find like-minded people and convey your message to them, to join the band and get everyone on the same vision?
In Austin, no, it wasn't.
Really?
Because I was doing a band. I actually lived in Minneapolis, Minnesota before that, and I had a band that was a darker, like progressive metal thing, not like, I guess not like Meshuggah, like somewhere between, I guess, the Meshuggah and like Rush or something, it was like, I don't know, but that was a really unique. I still listen to that band today, and I was like, man, that is some unique stuff that we were doing. Like, what the hell were we even doing? So going from that band, I got out of that place. It was really cold there, and so I left. And when I came to Austin, I immediately, I was like wearing cowboy boots in Minnesota, sliding around on the ice, in the middle of winter, and it just didn't work out very well. But when I came to Austin, like everybody was wearing cowboy boots. So it was easy for me to look and be like, hey, you play music? And that's how I found Asa, which was interesting because he was like this dude that just like, I mean, he just like, he looked like he was in the Allman Brothers, he was probably 29 or so. And I was like, man, this guy's a sweet looking dude. And he happened to play guitar. It's funny because he still looks the same today.
Really?
Like he's like, he found the fountain of youth. He always looked like a grown Allman Brother guy, So yeah, I met him and we just started playing acoustic, and I was exploring this other side because I had brought just my acoustic guitar, and he didn't even have an electric guitar at the time. He had an acoustic guitar. And we just sat around late at night and, did things to stay up late and like played music and in front of a bunch of like hippie kids that were sitting around us. And it was kind of like Zeppelin 3 kind of stuff, what came out,
Oh man. Yeah.
Just real acoustic, real minimal. And then we started kind of playing shows. And then we're like, well, we need a band. Like we need to like, I was like, I want to hear what you sound like electric, So he bought a guitar and we bought an amplifier and stuff like that. And then a drummer came over and hung out, and like my buddy Eric was like, yeah, I play bass. He played in bass in some band Sparta from El Paso. It was like guys from at the drive-in were in that band, and so he knew music, and it's funny. So he joined the band, and then we played our first show out of state in Denver, and we got billed higher because he was in that band.
Oh man!
So he was in some band that was popular. So we had like all this pressure on us to be good.
Oh jeez.
And
how
we
did it
started
go?
playing. Yeah, I think we did a couple. Like we did like an MC5 cover. We did some covers. We did like a Blue Cheer cover. Because that's what people were doing back then.
Yeah.
They weren't doing. They didn't sound like Ministry. They sounded like the people around us, they were kind of doing the vintage rock thing. But that also gets carried away, because when you want to play stuff that sounds classic, you suddenly run into this weird like dichotomy where you're like, all right, I want to exist in this realm, but it's throwback. It's like, they have all these names for it. It's like vintage rock, or it's like no, that's not what I want. You get lumped in with this vintage throwback rock sound, and I get it. I mean, it is what it is. But I guess I'm always like trying to explore new things or throw new elements of it in there. Because I didn't grow up on that, you know? When I was a teenager, it wasn't Led Zeppelin for me.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even Black Sabbath for me. I mean, I knew about that when I was young and then way older. But in that middle, when I was really exploring music, it was like gangster rap. You know, the Beastie Boys got me into punk rock. That's the band that I first heard that was punk rock. And then Bad Brains and Black Flag. And, you know, obviously, and from there, it was like Crass and, you know, Discharge and, you know.
Jeez.
But yeah, I mean, when you grow, when you're young, you know, you hear Thin Lizzy on the radio all the time. You hear, you know,
true.
You hear the classics, you know, and but it wasn't really what propelled me into music. So when people are like, oh man, it's like the next coming of these bands, it's like, well, that's not really what we're as bands trying to necessarily convey.
Yeah, you don't want to follow someone else's footsteps. You want to carve your own.
Like Scorpion Child is never going to be the Scorpions, you know. We strive to be that tight and that good.
Yeah.
When man, you know, those early Scorpions records are just mind blowing. But you know, we in Judas Priest and stuff like that, God, we love that, but it's not what we're not necessarily trying to just do that. You know, we're trying to do a lot of different things and make cool stuff that, you know, will connect, you know, into the new world, you know, into the future, as you were saying, you know, so.
Exactly. Do you think it's when you're lumped into that vintage rock and stuff like that, do you think it's hard almost to be taken seriously as a band?
I feel like it is. I feel like it is. I mean, you know, and I don't really say that from a pretentious standpoint, but I say that from like, I know that there's a lot of music out there, and we were part of a wave of bands that were being, you know, lumped in with that. I don't know how other bands feel. Maybe some bands are like, sweet, you know, that's what we want. That's what but I'm always just looking for something else. You know what I mean? Like, I'm always wanting to incorporate. I've always been this way. It's like my attention span to certain things only lasts for so long. But I do have the understanding and the maturity to know that, man, be careful with that, Aryn. You know, there's a fan base, and you want to expand on that fan base, but you don't want to like alienate them. Because I mean, if it were up to me, man, I would just, you know, like, next album's going to sound like Neubauten, or, you know, some weird, you know, noise, like the you know, something completely off the wall. You know, if I wasn't careful with that sort of thing. Because I still enjoy what it is that the foundation that the band started on. I just want to expand it. But as an artist, you also have to, like, you know, I guess that's what I want to say, you know, you have to expect that there's going to be the need for growth, and at the same time, you know, be able to maintain the integrity of you need. Don't forget your roots, you know. And our roots for the Scorpion Child was like, you know, we're a rock and roll band. You know, we're not. That's our genre.
Yeah, exactly. But it is it's a fine line, though. You know, as you said, you don't want to alienate fans, but you have this need to grow as a musician. You know, and it's hard to stay in the confines of your style of music and keep the fans happy.
It is, because I mean, I have zero interest making the same record over and over again, like repeating, rinse, repeat. You know, like, it's not. I don't understand that. I don't have an understanding for that. Our first two records that we did with Nuclear Blast were close enough for me.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, that's as close as I ever want to get to making the same record.
Right.
So album number 3 has got to be, or else why am I doing this? It's got to be, it has absolutely, with 100% certainty, take some sort of, unique new direction for my interest as a writer. And for these guys, for their investment in the band, they want to put their, we have a couple new guys that haven't been in the band. We've got 3 guys on this record that have not, and that's another hard thing. Fans, I remember it was really difficult when we first got signed onto the label, and they blast out a bunch of photos of the band and put them everywhere. And, that's the band that the fans got into first. But immediately within months following the release of that album, we were touring with different members, and fans were even like, oh my God, like, I can't handle this. I was so attached to this person and that person, what's happening here to my band? That's what they're saying.
Yeah.
And we're saying in life, not everybody is like Geezer Butler, Tony Iommi, Ozzy Osbourne, Bill Ward is going to be the same lineup for the first 30, or 20 years. It's not, or Zeppelin. I mean, they never changed. They were always the same guys pretty much, since the Yardbirds. So, I mean, I feel like, well, we've gone, shit, I must be hard to be in a band with, because we've had like 9 or 10 former members, But some of that has to do with, so-and-so had a kid, or someone, needed to start their career, and, another person, hated me, or, another person, it's there for various reasons. That people come and go from the band. So it's illness too. It's been illness. I mean, it's been just different things that have created that. We were just unlucky in that sense, but it worked out. We made it happen. And maybe we had to break up a couple times, but we made it happen.
Yeah. In that respect, then, would you say you're a hard man to work with when it comes to music?
I don't think so. In the scheme of, people that I've read about and watched, behind the music documentaries on, like, I see some of these guys and I'm like, good Jesus. Like, how do these guys get up in the morning? How do the guys around these guys get up in the morning?
Yeah, that's the thing.
You know what I mean? Like, I mean, I may have been difficult or opinionated about certain things, but I think if I wasn't that way, this wouldn't have, the vision could have veered one way or the other. But touching on that as well. Like, I've always wanted it to be like somewhat of a democratic process, but now, since I'm the only constant member that's been in the band since 2006, 2007 to present. Whenever these guys, I surround myself with like very creative and very talented individuals, and have always, stopped at nothing to find these, these similar like-minded people, people much more talented than I. Makes me more creative. And when they come up with, when these insanely talented guys come up with these cool ideas, they look at me like, is this, like, our fearless leader, Aryn, is this, does this sound like a perfect child? And, like, I think it's an amazing feeling to be able to make music with people that, like, I don't have to be, it can be a democracy. I don't have to be this Nazi guy, leader of the band guy, who's just a total prick and it's his way or the highway. That's not the way that I behave.
Yeah.
Whether it's taken that way or not, well, Darren doesn't like it. I don't want it to be like that. And so I think with this band, it's important for me to, like, allow each person to be able to express themselves and what they want to do. But I think with these, the newer members of the band, they understand that there is a legacy of some sort in this band that has a sound, and they're mature, musicians, and they recognize that, and it's not about me. It's not about them. It's about what we're doing together, you know.
Yeah, yeah, I get you.
I'm just the constant member that they look at to be like, in my eyes, this is who I am. You know, the guy that's been there all along. So I guess I kind of have to sign off on whether that's be acceptable. But then there's like label partners that have to sign off on that overall creation. And then, you know, I mean, there's
so many different levels to it.
So many different levels, yeah, that you have to kind of adhere to when you're writing music on a level that's higher than a garage and a local pub gig, you know.
Yeah, true.
If you want to tour, do all that stuff, you have to answer to so many different opinions, and it's not just me. It's not, you know, it's a greater thing.
That's something a lot of people don't realize as well when it comes to bands. You know, they just think, oh, you go on the road, you get successful, the book ends with you. But there's investors, there's record labels, there's so many people you have to please when you're in the band, I suppose.
And I guess that's where my difficulty comes in.
Really?
Is I'm not always willing to just do what these people, you know what I mean? Like, I try to fight for my guys and what we want to sound like in our identity. And sometimes money and identity doesn't go. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we've had to compromise as much as I'm willing to compromise, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess.
And that's definitely created some problems for me.
It'd have to, sure, you know.
But I mean, I refuse to fucking, you know, bend over and just take it in the ass 100%.
Yeah.
I've already done, you know, I've already shown like this is as much flexibility as I have, and it's ruined opportunities for the band. I've seen it. We probably would have been on, you know, we probably would have gone after radio or done a few bigger concerts or things if I didn't stay, you know. So I don't want to say punk rock, but if I would have, you know, if I wouldn't have stuck to my, you know, these unspoken ethics and been so vocal about, you know, people having a part, and I get it, you know, if they're the financier, they want to have a say about it, but it's like you're financing what, like, remember what you fell in love with, you know, when you first started working with the band. This isn't like look, I mean, we've had a good relationship with Nuclear Blast as far as I'm aware of, but, you know, we just want to try to communicate who we want to be as a band.
Yeah.
And not, and we, you know, and this is, and I want to be attached to people that are in line with that vision as well. And even with that, it's not just labels, it's lots of people, you know, management that we've had, you know, there's just, it gets blurred, you know. It starts to, like, when you start to think about it as a business, it takes away from the fun of starting the band, you know. That's all it is. Like, we started thinking of our band as a business before we even had signed a record deal. Or
really?
Well, we started to, you know, once you print up merch and print up your own CDs and book your own tour, it's a business, you know.
Yeah, once you're putting money into it, you need to get it back. Yeah.
It's not just like fun and games, opening up the garage door and playing for the people in the neighborhood, you know. For apple pie and hot dogs. I mean, it's, and, you know, like, it's a different, it becomes a bit, when it becomes a business, it puts that stress and that people want to have their hands in it, you know.
Yeah, I get you.
Even band members, you know, everybody wants a piece of something, you know. And if the money, you know, like, it's interesting because we never made any money.
Really?
I had people that have thought that we were making, you know, it's the perception that we make money. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, you played a big festival, all of a sudden you guys, like, you know, can I get a handout? You know?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, but after our sound guy and our tour, you know, after everyone gets paid at the end of the day, it's not, you know,
not a whole
there's
lot
no
left.
money left.
Yeah. Jeez. It's in that respect, would you say it's worth it?
Yeah, this is how it is. I mean, bands look, I think people's perception that don't play music is, oh my God, there's an opportunity. This band's big or something, which we're not a big band, but they'll see a band on a stage with a lot of people in front of them. They must be making a lot of money. It must be nice to be them.
Yeah.
Well, it's very difficult to be them.
Yeah.
They're like slaves. They're like rats in a cage, and animals in this overall machine of music. And these people are just these rats and these animals, which that's who we are. Just want to be creative and express ourselves.
Yeah.
But there's so much more at play trying to capitalize.
So more behind the scenes.
Yeah, it's how it is with most bands. Most acts have an entourage of people that want to get their hands in it.
Yeah. So those all sound like not very appealing things, but what are the good things or the fun parts that make you want to be in a band?
Yeah, see, there we go. Yeah, enough negativity. It's not even negativity. It's just you got to have an awareness of it
it's realistic
when you're doing what you want to do. Which I wouldn't have restarted this band if it wasn't if I had forgotten those roots.
Yeah.
If I'd given up on that foundation, people say like giving up on the dream. It's like, well, the dream is just to be able to have a creative outlet at this.
Yeah.
I want to perform. I want to have a creative outlet, and there's no one that's going to stop me from doing that. Even COVID hasn't stopped people from doing that. I mean, there's going to be a way to get your music out there, and you might have to have a lot of canceled shows, which is completely understandable. But, ultimately we're going to get through this as people, as society is going to get through this, and it's going to be different. Sure. Things are always going to change and evolve based on certain circumstances, but you want to keep the excitement, of like, why did I do this in the first place? Because I felt like it was meaningful to me and I was connecting with other people.
Yeah.
When I go to a show, it's like when you go to a show, like I want to watch the band. I want to be captivated and connect with what it is that they're saying, how they sound, or how they're manipulating sound. I want to be able to see, based on their art, it's got to connect with me in some way. If I'm watching like a noise group, turning pedals and screeching and making noise and beating large metal things against, a saw blade, it I can feel that.
Yeah.
I can understand the impact of that, just like I can watching, an orchestra.
Yeah, it's all about how it makes you feel.
We want that feeling. We want that connection. We want to get off in that way, and I feel like there's many instances in the business side of music, like I was saying, that could have caused me to give up on this dream of playing music. But it's like you read a good book, you want to finish the book. You don't want to just stop 3/4 of the way through. You want to see what happens.
Yeah.
I want to see what I can explore in my time, my limited time that I have on this earth. I want to see what I can create with people.
Well, you don't want to reach the end and look back and say, geez, I should have done that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if I quit playing music, like I've quit. We stopped in 2016, and I had several other musical projects going on, to satisfy time passing, to create inspiration for me to eventually woodshed and come back around to feeling comfortable with doing this again with a few new people. And, it's for the wrong reasons. If you're not doing it for the love of the creation of it, you got it all wrong,
Yeah, exactly. No one's it's not a very good idea to be doing it to get rich anyway.
Yeah, I mean, who's really getting rich? I mean, there's like that 5 percentile of, not even 5% of the musicians that we see are you know, the very small percent have gotten rich. Yeah.
Yeah. Like with Spotify and stuff like that, the amount that they actually pay musicians is pitiful.
Yeah. Nuclear Blast handles our Spotify. So I don't, you know what I mean? It gets watered down one more step there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Spotify, the way I look at Spotify is that's out of my control right now. You know, the way I look at that is I don't use Spotify, but those that do can discover music.
Yeah.
It sucks that it's at the expense of the artists or such a small. I hate thinking about that because I mean I want to smash the computer screen when I think about stuff like that. You know,
Yeah, I don't
it
blame
makes
you.
me upset. It's negative. There's nothing. Neil Young can pull off of Spotify and try to shake Joe Rogan. And I mean, I understand what's going on right now, and I feel like there's a revolution coming. Sure,
Yeah, it definitely feels that way anyway.
but it's not just going to be one artist. Neil Young is a very well accomplished, very prominent artist.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's kind of sad to see that doesn't even shake the
No,
Joe
not
Rogan.
nowadays. I feel like it needs to be if Drake or Kanye West did it, then people would stop and listen, but I don't think the likes of them would do it. The younger crowd nowadays, I was reading something the other day, and anyone under, I think, 20 to 30 is like, who's this old guy? 30 to 40 is like, I didn't even know Neil Young was on Spotify. And then 40 to 60 is like, geez, I didn't even know he was still alive.
It's so funny, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm the old guy now, looking at the younger generation and shaking my head like, oh my god.
Yeah.
But I remember being the young punk with the mohawk, walking around town with my skateboard, and old people shrugging and shaking their heads. And me being like, "Fuck you, dude!" And then the young. So I have to kind of stop myself because I'm still very much a kid, in many senses. I don't know. See, here's the problem. I know what the mainstream populace of younger people listen to, and into their 20s and 30s. But I really don't. I feel out of touch, and I feel wrong for this. But I feel very out of touch with what the teenagers are listening to in the underground sense of things. Like, what is underground right now? What are they listening to? Like, I should know this.
Yeah,
like, I don't.
I'd be similar now as well. I wouldn't be up to date on what they're listening to either. And you're right, we should know these things.
Yeah, we should know. Like, I should be more aware of this and actually want to make it a quest of mine to. And I was just thinking about this the other day because my lady and I were taking a walk in the neighborhood, actually had this very same discussion about how we feel. I mean, my lady's younger than like 10 years younger than me. And she doesn't even know, like we don't, we're wondering what the underground is like these days, like we try to go to shows if we can, but we go to shows of stuff that we're currently into.
Yeah, exactly.
And whether if we're currently into black metal, we're going to go to black metal shows. If we're, like whatever we're kind of listening to. If we're listening to noise, we'll go to, see noise. And we like different, things. We go to the goth bar and listen to, go see, goth bands and stuff like that. We'll go to, we'll see punk rock and we'll see all that stuff. But like, it's all people within like a 10 or 20 year radius of us. It's not the teenagers.
Yeah.
Like, and like obviously, when you pass by the schoolhouse and the kids are getting out of school and the buses are lining up, you don't want to stare too hard at a bunch of young school kids.
That's true.
So you just keep driving. But I kind of want to. I always look for those red-haired teenagers with the typo negative T-shirts and the the baggy pants and the chains and stuff. Like I'm always on the lookout for that because I want to see like what the youth in revolt to the mainstream currently is, because that's what I was doing. I was revolting against this vile, mainstream. Like when a band in the 90s, you remember when a band would go mainstream?
Yeah.
We'd be like, fuck those guys. Like
yeah, exactly.
Nirvana was so cool until Smells Like Teen Spirit came out.
Yeah.
But there was part of me, even as a young punk, that heard Smells Like Teen Spirit. And I was like, I remember that. I was like, I've never heard anything like this. Holy shit.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That was
wow. And I was like, that's kind of cool that that's on a major label,
Yeah, exactly. That's it.
Like to me, it didn't matter because like it's cool. It sounded refreshing and awesome. And I was into, glam rock and still am, into like 80s, cock rock stuff. I mean, it doesn't translate well as far as, a lot of, most of the 80s would be pretty canceled right now because people are.
I'd say all of it would be now.
Yeah. Times have changed. But yeah, I always try to keep an eye out to see if I can resonate with any of it. You know what I mean? Because I feel out of touch. I feel like that guy. I'm not like an old man yet, but I'm getting there. And I'm to the point where I'm like, God damn what people are listening to these days.
Yeah, I think it's something that happens to everyone, though, in every generation. You're going to reach that age and you'll no longer be able to connect with the younger generation,
Yeah, correct.
It's just a natural progression. We'll touch on your gigs for a minute. So what would you say was the best gig you've ever played?
Well, the most monumental for me would have been Hellfest.
Oh, man.
In 2014. My parents flew from Missouri in the middle of America to France and rented a BMW and drove around France, and they rented a castle for the band to stay in, like a small castle.
Yeah.
And that was so cool. And it was cheap too. It was like a couple $100 a night to stay in this like castle on a vineyard, and they cooked for us, had family meals. It was amazing. And then the Hellfest experience was incredible. We played right on the main stage, right? Blues Pills played on the other main stage, and then we did our first European tour with. So we had a lot of we ran into a lot of people that we'd met up to that date at that show. So it was just this big like, hey, so and so that I've always looked up to. This is my mom. This is my dad. And they were wearing these like tie-dyed Scorpion Child shirts that they tie-dyed themselves.
Yeah.
And they came back and into catering with us and ate, and it was just such an experience. And like in Solitude played right after us on the same stage, and it was just this connection of, it was like a really great experience because I'd never played in front of like 50,000-60,000 people before,
Jesus
and I was
Christ.
like, I love this.
Yeah.
This is great. It's so cool. It's just like it blew my mind. I'd never experienced that to that point, and for me, it was life-changing as far as a concert. Now I know that I still love the club shows and even house shows and stuff like that. I love the energy of, transferring energy in a small environment. Rather than, the Hellfest stage or the, Wacken stage or the download stage. These are like, from you to the barricade is 30 feet.
Yeah.
And then there's a sea of people. So the connection is like you're singing to like a shag rug.
I've never heard it put like that before now. Yeah.
Me either. It just kind of came out. But you're playing to like this, you have to learn how to perform to an endless ocean.
It's not as easy to connect as the small venues.
Yeah, because you can't like rah, 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 and then like feed the microphone to the fans, and they can say rah, 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 and you can say rah, rah. It's not like that. No, it's not like that.
Jeez. That must have been a point then when you really it must have really sunk in, I've made it, or at least it felt that way.
I'm trying to put myself back in 2014 when I first experienced that.
Mm.
And I don't know if it was that, oh, here it is, I've made it. It was just like, whatever this is, I need to maintain this.
Yeah.
Because the next show, and I'll tell you why, because the next show after that, we played in a small club for like 50 to like 100 people.
Oh, man.
And,
that's a big change.
And it just, you know what I mean? Like a lot of bands do this, they get the big festival and, it's not every show is going to be a big festival.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you go back, you crawl back to your cave of wherever you are in the status of music. So it was very humbling to play the next show for a small group of people, because in the next show was another festival.
Yeah, so you're like up and down and up and down.
Thousands of people in front of us again, and then the following show in between those festivals, every show between the festivals brought us back down to like reality. And I think that's very important. Whatever your reality is, obviously, Black Sabbath's reality became a far different reality than any reality that we've come to know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So their reality is when they're not playing a festival-sized show, they're playing a festival-sized show. So for them, it's just different because of the time period that they came about and the heritage act that they became, like I will never know what that's like. I'm certain that I'll never know that feeling where every show is sold out and every show, that was part of that wave.
Yeah.
So being the wave that is not that wave, going back to what we're saying, is a little more difficult. You're like, I don't want to be a throwback vintage. That's not all that I want to see with music,
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to explore more because that was them. This is us,
Exactly.
We're on a different path than those bands.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's fine. I mean, you don't see you don't see a lot of the heritage acts passing torches. The younger bands every day, that's just not a thing that you see, I mean, Sabbath took some cool younger bands out on tour and it helped them out, and that was really cool, but not everyone does that,
No, they usually don't really. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just kind of like, well, you guys are on your own. Good luck.
Yeah.
And where there is camaraderie is a very special thing, because those no one lives forever.
Exactly.
So you have to do with your time that you've been given. You have to do your very best at creating what you want to create.
Yeah, make your own legacy. We'll flip it around then. What would you say is the worst gig experience you've ever had? If there is one.
It's been a while, but we played a gig in front of my parents and my cousins. Right. And maybe 2 or 3 other people. And it's hard. It's really hard to do. You have to learn how to do that. You have to learn how to, crawl before you walk. But it's hard. It's nerve-wracking. I can play in front of my mom, in front of like the Hellfest crowd, no problem. But just playing in front of her with very few, where I can see so much empty space in the room, and it's just her with your earplugs and my dad, and just a sparse other group of people. You feel like you're being judged on a level that is,
oh man, yeah, actually
it's like if there were like 20 or 30 more people in there, there'd be more energy in the room that you can feel. Like it's so hard for me to fake when there's no energy. You know what I mean? Like it's always been difficult for me. And that's when I get the most nervous and uncomfortable, is when there's like, when you can see only a few people and they're just watching you the whole time, and you're like, man, there's so much pressure here. So that one of those gigs would have been the hardest. I mean, we've had gigs where like we kept going and the power got pulled on us and stuff like that.
Really?
I mean, that kind of sucks, but I guess that's how it goes. I'm sure there's other hard gigs, like playing on a gravel hill at like a 45% grade,
Right.
that's tough because the drum kit's sliding downhill and,
Yeah.
and it's like raining, and there's no cover over your gear,
Jesus.
that's tough.
Yeah, that does sound like a take the trophy of the worst one.
That's tough. I mean, so there's tough places to play gigs for sure,
Yeah. Jeez.
I can't remember there being just an awful gig.
Well, that's a good thing.
I mean, I'm sure there are, but I've repressed those.
Yeah.
I've repressed those memories.
Yeah, I suppose that's the thing though, with everything, you only remember the good, you tend to forget the bad very quickly.
Which is good to have that trait.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, would you not agree that you'd rather remember the good stuff than the bad stuff?
Yeah, exactly. Nobody wants to remember the bad stuff anyway, it'll only play on your mind and drag you down, really.
Yeah. Wow. So yeah, I mean, there's been bad gigs, but I think it's vastly outshined by the quality
Yeah.
of gigs that we've had the fortune to be able to perform in.
Yeah.
I don't think of myself like bands that have been massively rich, the Stones and the Beatles and successful. Like, you can't go around thinking that you're going to hit that.
No.
But even those bands have experienced horrendous gigs and can tell you funny stories about them, that time that so and so fell off the stage and did this and caught on fire and weird stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, there's bands of all different shapes and sizes. It's all scalable.
Exactly. So we'll move to the future. What are the future plans for Scorpion Child? Is there anything set in stone?
Well, we have a show February 26th, which will be our first show back in a few years. And then we have South by Southwest, which we have two parties that we play at South by Southwest. And then after that, I'm trying to get into a booking queue to get some tours but I know that everything's just getting rescheduled and some tours have gotten canceled. It could be a long time before we get a tour. I've accepted that. Like, I'm thinking like a decent tour could be like 2 years out.
Definitely. I was convinced that it was going to be 2022. Over here, everything was cancelled for last year. Near the end of the year, there was a couple of concerts, and I was convinced.
Where are you
in Ireland? Southern Ireland.
Southern Ireland.
Yeah, but I was convinced gigs were going to be going ahead in 2022, and I think there's about 5 or 6 massive ones now that have been cancelled so far, which kind of sucks. So I'd say you're right. It's going to be a year, 2 years at least before it's even near tour time.
Yeah, and I mean, that makes me sad, but it's, what can I do about it? We can play local and regional stuff until that time comes, I guess. And we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But that's the state of music right now, you just have to keep your head.
At least everybody else is in the same boat,
Oh yeah, we're not alone for sure.
Yeah.
Fans have been hitting us up. Come to Liverpool, come to Belfast, come to Toronto, come to Pittsburgh, and I respond to each and every one of them when I can, and I'm like, that would be the dream to be able to get back there and just reconnect with some people that we've connected with and meet. And that's the thing for me, like touring is is the experience. It's not just like, oh, I get to play a bunch of shows,
Yeah, it's the
it's
whole
the
thing.
whole experience. It's the food culture, it's like the people that we meet from country to country and build these meaningful relationships with. I have lots of meaningful relationships stateside, and have, since I've been able to go to other countries, I've built meaningful relationships with, people in other parts of the world. And to be able to like rekindle and reunite and then add to those experiences, to me, is it's not money. It's these experiences, because I mean, I have to pay money to have these experiences, when all is said and done, like to have those experiences, at least if I can break even, it's like a free trip all over the world. Think about it, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
playing
actually.
music allows you to break even and see things, if nothing else. Some you come back in the negatives, some you come back with a little money in your pocket, but all in all, it's about having these like cultural experiences,
Yeah.
and to massage these various relationships that you've made with people
Yeah.
is really important,
I've never thought of it like that, actually. That's sure that'd be more valuable than the monetary gain.
Oh, dude, 100%. Because at the end of life, does it matter if you have a green piece of paper in your pocket?
Exactly. It's the experiences you'll take with you.
When you die, it's the pictures that you took and what's in your mind. If there's anything left that's why I want to die because I mean, I've got Alzheimer's in my genetic
Oh man,
code
really?
somewhere down the line. So I would rather go before I lose the memories of life, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think anyone would blame you. I'd be similar myself now.
I mean, it's a common disease,
Mm.
But a lot of people have to, life keeps you going,
Yeah.
and your mind deteriorates.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then at the end of the day, there's like not much, you can't even remember your own son or your own daughter, and you die, like that's not what I want.
No. It's kind of it's a sad existence.
Yeah. So I try to write in a journal when I'm on tour, and like I have these like big art books, there's no lines in the book. It's just like blank pages, and I just draw and write my lyrics in these books.
Yeah.
And I write, what I experience, when I'm out there, who I met. I write these stories. Maybe one day somebody can see that. If I forget about it, I can read about it.
That's a great idea, actually.
So there's a psychology in maintaining these memories, for long periods of time.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll move on to the last couple of questions now. Everyone gets these questions before they go, I'm afraid. So if you could see any performer from history for one night only in concert, who would it be?
Well, I mean, maybe Jimi Hendrix or somebody, and just somebody that has some sort of mind-blowing talent.
Yeah.
Like I never got to see Michael. I never got to see Michael in concert. That would be nice. I mean, it's tough, I mean, I never got to see Black Flag, that would have been cool, so of all shapes and sizes, there's concerts. But again, it's like the psychology thing. It's like, have I seen any of those bands?
Yeah.
Maybe some of them I've had the chance to see, and maybe it was at a time where their performance might have been in a downturn, or maybe it was everything that I ever imagined that it would be.
Yeah.
I remember a couple of years ago, a band from the 90s, like a American like shoegaze space rock type band named Failure, reunited, and they played a show at the House of Blues in Houston, and I went with a friend, and I wasn't expecting it to have the impact on me that it did, but they played a magical show. And there was
man.
like maybe, I don't know, in the whole House of Blues, there was probably 80 people there.
Yeah.
So you could just move about on the floor and hear the band, and they're just like a wall of sound and noise. Jeez. And just, you know, it was, for me, it was just like a swirling, beautiful swirl of chaos, you know. So it was a mental thing, you know, and it was just like hearing the record, but like I felt like I morphed into the record. Like I became, like they gave me such an experience that I felt like it was everything. All these emotions just kind of flooded out, and I became part of this astral, you know, plane that they were on, you know. And I feel like that's a big part of how you translate to your fan base. And then I've seen them at a festival since, and it was a totally different deal.
Oh, really?
But I think at that time, they played well. It just wasn't the environment. I feel like at the House of Blues, they had this huge, it was dark in there. They had this huge projection of this movie playing behind them, the movie Fantastic Planet. And it was the overall experience. So when a band can hit you on that level, where it takes you outside of your own head.
Yeah. You know, you've found something special then. There's not many that can do that, but that's what music is all about, and what I suppose musicians aspire to, being able to do that to an audience.
Yeah, and that's what it should be about, you know. Like if you never forget the foundation on, you know, where you came from, where you going back to your first question, like what was the first, you know, bit of music that really inspired you, and you know, like if you never forget that moment, you know, you're in it
exactly
to win it.
Exactly.
You're going to discover new things that are going to maybe remind you of that experience or surpass that experience, or they're going to put you into a similar mind frame where you're like, man, I'm not even thinking about, you know, anything else in this world besides connecting what I'm doing right here, right now.
Yeah, exactly. The next one. So if you could be locked in a room for 24 hours with any performer from history, who would it be?
Is this like a padded cell?
It could be any sort of room you want, but you're in there for 24 hours.
And it's not like a writer or a philosopher. It's just
well, it's usually musical, but if you prefer, it can be a writer or philosopher.
This is a tough question.
I've heard that before.
Because then it becomes about the personality of this person interacting with your personality might not mesh the same way as their creative output connects with you, you know? So I fear there being some sort of a letdown in a way.
Yeah. It's that whole never meet your hero.
Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to think of somebody that's like so unpretentious, yet so intelligent and so easy to talk to. That's a really tough one. I guess I've never thought about that. No one's ever asked me that question, I don't think. You know, honestly, it might be someone like Daryl Hall.
Really?
He just seems like someone I'd love to talk to.
Right.
Or Huey Lewis.
Yeah. Two guys that are known for being really nice guys, or at least to come across that way anyway.
But have crazy stories.
Yeah.
And have shared so many experiences with so many different people from so many different backgrounds, you know?
Yeah.
But they're like neutral, and that they're not like heavy metal guy. I mean, obviously, okay, well, Dio. Everyone always tells me, man, Dio would have loved you. You guys would have been like two peas in a pod type thing, you know?
Really?
I never met him. Huge fan, you know? I mean, huge influence on me as far as the rock realm.
Yeah.
Arguably favorite singer in rock. You know, someone that I really looked up to. I kind of forgot about him, but a personality nonetheless where I see interviews of him, and whether he's talking about Richie Blackmore in a negative way or he's talking about how kind somebody was, his opinions, the way that he articulates things.
Yeah.
I feel like they're right. I feel like we would have definitely gotten on with each other.
That'd be
in a way that maybe Daryl Hall would be kind of a similar experience. I don't know, just it's hard because there's not any one person, but I guess if we're talking about a rock musician, probably Dio would be somebody that I would most connect with.
Yeah. It's a good choice.
Yeah.
The final one. So, if there was a song that could appear on the soundtrack to your life, what would it be?
A soundtrack to my life. Like
a punk song.
Probably a punk song. My lady said probably some punk song. Yeah, some rudimentary Peni or some Crass or something. Is any one song? It'd probably be a Journey.
Really?
Like not the band, but it'd probably be a song that is like a journey. Like
yes.
Going back to Dio, like a stargazer type song that takes you on a journey. Lyrically, the fantasy thing is not where I necessarily connect with.
Yeah.
Like where you got a bong in your lap and you're on some elves and gnomes and wizards, stuff like that. But I feel like musically it would be a song like that, because that's like, think of a more epic song than Stargazer.
Yeah, true. It's true.
You would be quite hard pressed. Like they had to have accidentally fallen into that one. The most epic songs that I've ever been a part of writing have been complete accidents.
Really?
Jam, stuff like that. So I feel like you'd have to separate the lyrical persona from the persona of the musical element as well. I feel like those are two separate entities. But both together, I don't know if I could think of a song that really took me as a whole. There wasn't like a guy and a guitar, like a folk song, like that Jackson C. Frank guy I was telling you about. I feel like that whole Blues Run the Game album is full of songs that like you feel the guy, musically and lyrically. It'd be something like that, maybe for the modern generation, like an Elliott Smith type artist.
I get you.
As far as really connecting musically and lyrically with a lot of people, that suffer from the same emotions, I guess. Yeah. It's something I would have to think about.
Yeah, it's kind of
it's really so broad. It can be listening to Chopin, like listening to like a Moonlight Sonata type thing, where you're in such a dark, beautiful place.
Yeah,
like a cozy, warm arrangement. Yeah. Have you answered all these questions for yourself? Like, do you know?
I have, but they tend to change on a daily basis.
That's okay.
I'd be similar to you now. The soundtrack to my life, I wouldn't be able to give you an answer at the moment, I think. And to be locked in a room with someone, I kind of flip-flop, but I tend to always go back to Jim Morrison. But I don't think that'd be too healthy. He
was an there's a lot of like a biopic on him. There's a lot of documentaries and movies made on him as a poet and him as this almost fictional character that existed. So there's the legend of Jim Morrison, that it was a very brief amount of time that he was even like could even make his impact.
Yeah, exactly.
He was a 27 club guy, wasn't he?
Yeah, 27.
So see, when you're 27, when you hit 27, you haven't even begun to self-actualize.
That's what I'm always thinking. Like these guys that died at 27, they were only at the beginning, you know?
Yeah. So how much mystique and fascination that someone up to that age can really bring to the world is. But
Yeah.
I mean, then there's the whole "it's better to burn out than to fade away" thing, right? So
Yeah, that's the other side of it.
maybe the most interesting shit that he ever shat out. These guys up until that age, maybe it was time.
Possibly.
But, I mean, maybe I'm not saying that he should die, but maybe maybe that was
That was
if he
it.
would have lived on, that you wouldn't say that. Maybe things would change with him as well, or he'd have some revelation like Jim Carrey, where I'm not doing funny roles anymore. I'm doing serious roles.
Yeah. But who knows, if he had lived, maybe nobody would be talking about the Doors and him nowadays, he might have completely faded away and been forgotten.
That's a really good point. Yeah, but I mean, he is a fascinating character. I'm not going to deny that.
Yeah, he is.
And he was surrounded by these rich and famous types, and that prestige. These like artists, and he was vouched for by a lot of these. I have this record. I don't know if you've ever heard it. It's a Jimi Hendrix record called "I Woke Up." I woke up this morning and found myself dead.
No, actually.
And anyway, Jimmy's playing, but Jim Morrison's the singer on that record. And it's a live show. And Jimmy's playing is just incredible on that record. But it catches things in the raw element. So Jim Morrison from side A to the end of side B just gets progressively more, he gets progressively more inebriated as time goes on.
Right.
And by the end of the record, he's so drunk, he's screaming his head off. And the music, and Jimmy just plays to that, and the music just gets more intense and more intense.
Yeah.
And you find him in the most raw, like vulnerable state where he barely has any voice left because he's screaming, and it's just pure raw emotion. And sometimes when I hear that record, like I wonder what it would be like to be at that show and see that, because I've seen so many drunken shows where you're watching some punk band and they just get drunk, or drunkers that go and their music starts to suffer.
Yeah.
But with this, it was just Jim, like the intriguing figure that he is, getting more and more raw as time goes on.
Yeah.
But Jimmy, band holding it together, all the Mitch Mitchell and everybody's holding it together, and it's interesting to watch him spiral.
Yeah.
Throughout the album. And it even made me more fascinated. I'm like, man, this
I don't blame
real
you.
shit. Yeah.
Jeez, there's not many that could hold it together like that and actually make it more fascinating and almost a brilliant performance. The worse he got.
Because Morrison, his slop was just brilliant.
Yeah.
Like he really brought to mind a whole generation of artists who, like Sonic Youth, if they weren't sloppy, they wouldn't be interesting.
Yeah.
To me, at least, I think that their chaos is magical. Like, and I could listen to a couple hours of it before turning it off. And it would take me somewhere, depending on what album it is. But there's certain bands that like thrive on that, like look at how good Nirvana, look at how good Chris Novoselic and Dave Grohl were together.
Yeah.
It didn't matter if Kurt was going off the rails on a crazy train.
Yeah, true. Actually, they were able to hold it together.
They were able to do it. And Kurt wasn't the greatest guitar player, but he was creative enough to get through it.
Yeah.
Like Jimi Hendrix, you would never know that he's fucking up and being sloppy because he knows it's like a skateboard. If you know how to roll out of it and make it graceful, it's almost as if you didn't fall in the first place.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's how I look at Jimi Hendrix, and that's how you can look at that performance with Jim Morrison and other performances that we've seen where he's on various drugs. The band has to follow Jim going down these paths of.
Yeah. Could you imagine being in that band though and getting on stage and being like, oh Jesus, not again tonight? When he starts going off on one.
Yeah, and then what's his name? The
Ray Manzarek.
Ray Manzarek, and then he goes on to be an X.
Yeah.
And play on that first X record, like the difference between the drama of Jim Morrison and like Exene. Like, it has to be such an interesting coloration in his career. He's like, wow. So the Doors, I'm kind of leaving the Doors, but it makes sense for me to go play with some punks. John Doe and Decline of Western Civilization kind of fit into his musical curriculum, in a way. It was it's really cool to see like that, the 60s, like remember the 60s Stooges versus the early 70s Stooges, when they were like a psych rock band almost. That's the most interesting Stooges to me, is when they were transitioning and they were showing the world from the Doors and the 60s when they were taking the sounds that they were influenced by in the late 60s, the Doors and the Beatles and the Kinks, the Kinks, Kinks, and then going into the 70s and becoming this gritty punk rock and roll animal type show,
Total evolution.
But that first album with like, I Want to Be Your Dog, and there's some really psychedelic moments on that album which would not have happened without bands like the Doors.
Yeah, true, actually. That's a very good point.
And Iggy just like kind of did his thing and just made it what into the 70s what it was, And brought Detroit that sound that bands like the MC5 took to that level. Just,
Well, I've thoroughly enjoyed the last hour or so getting an insight into Scorpion Child.
Thanks for listening to my caffeinated rants.
With the night, the liver share. Do you love music? Music news and guest interviews with artists from all around the world across many different genres? My name's Nolan and I love music. In fact, I love music so much I created a podcast entirely dedicated to it called Every Podcast I Love Is Dead. Every week is a brand new episode where I interview musicians, artists, podcasters, radio hosts, and so much more. New episodes are available every Thursday on all your favorite podcast streaming platforms, and you can check us out on social media and at everypodcastiloveisdead.com. Hope you can join me.
Hey guys, I really hope you enjoyed this show. If you did, rate and review us on iTunes. Really helps the show grow. You can find us on social media at Concerts That Made Us Podcast, and be sure to check out our website at www.concertsthatmadeus.com. And if you'd like to support the show, you can do so by signing up at patreon.com/concerts that made us. We've got 3 tiers available. If that's something you're interested in, you'll get access to a private Discord, exclusive uncut video versions of the podcast, early access to ad-free versions of the episodes, and much, much more. So, until next time, keep rocking.
Hey, what are you guys still doing here? The show's over. It's over. You can go home. Go on. We'll see you next time. We'll be here. Bye.